Hello everyone. So thank you for joining our webinar today, Paving the Road to Net Zero. Accelerate your net zero goals using a proven lifecycle design software. So my name is Alexis and I'm the marketing coordinator at eTool, and I'll be your moderator for today. So I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to the elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. So the agenda today is, after a brief introduction on eTool, we are going to talk about why it's important to decarbonise roads, how eToolLCD can accelerate your road project to net zero, decarbonising roads with eToolLCD, and then we'll have a presentation from our special guest speakers from Arcadis, followed by a Q&A session. So I'm going to give a little introduction of our speakers today. First, we have Maryia Perthern. She's our business development manager for the Australasian region and Germany. Maryia is also an engineer and business manager with over 10 years experience in climate change, renewable energy, lithium-ion battery, and electric vehicle sector in Europe. Next, we have Rob Campbell, who's our services group leader, who's been an LCA practitioner for the last 3.5 years. He contributes to the technical working group for Infrastructure Sustainability Council of Australia, as well as being an expert reference panelist for Green Building Council of Australia and 2 working groups for the Materials and Embodied Carbon Leaders Alliance. He's modelled over 70 building and infrastructure life cycle assessments and has saved approximately 47 million kilograms of carbon. For our special guest speakers, we have Nicole Liang, who's a pavement engineer and has been with Arcadis for the last 7 years. She primarily designs pavements for roads and intermodals, but has also conducted financial and environmental life cycle assessments of pavements and has worked closely with Arcadis sustainability team in the last year to ensure sustainability is incorporated into all designs. And lastly, we have Laszlo Horvath, who's a senior engineer in the Arcadis sustainability team and has been working with eTool on a range of projects over the last 4 years. He's a member of the GBCA Energy and Carbon Expert Reference Panel. Laszlo is also an ISAP and a GSAP and has delivered IS and Green Star ratings on major multi-billion-dollar metro, rail and road projects across Victoria and New South Wales. So over the last 2 years, he has been focusing on working with several Arcadis design disciplines to embed sustainability into the company's project delivery processes. Now I'm going to pass on to Maryia for an introduction on eTool.
Yeah, thank you, Alexis. Thanks and hi everyone. I'd like to provide a quick introduction about eTool for those who haven't heard of our company before. So eTool is a company providing lifecycle assessment software and services with the goal to decarbonize the construction sector. eTool serves organizations who are aiming to lead the industry in delivering low carbon infrastructure and buildings. And we have been recognized for our integrity, teamwork, and passion for environment. We also measure our own footprint. And also we joined recently a 1% for Planet, donating 1% of our annual revenue to support businesses and organizations combating climate change. We have worked on many infrastructure projects, and our list of subscribers keeps rapidly growing in Australia and Europe. Here are our valued clients and subscribers. You will find various organizations such as Public Transport Authority in Western Australia, or HS2 in the UK, Campbell in New Zealand, and also a list of consultants that work globally, such as Arcadis, Jacobs, Smart McDonald's, Mac, Arab, and CPB contractors. So today we will be talking about why it is important to decarbonize roads and how to do it. As you may know, roads are one of the highest contributors to the global emissions. According to the IEA, transport has been had the highest reliance on fossil fuels and accounted for 37% of carbon emissions from end-use sectors in 2021. And within the transportation sector, road transportation is the largest source of emissions, accounting for around 70–75% of total transport-related emissions. Therefore, we really have to look at how to reduce these emissions by 2030 and think about how we design, build, and operate roads today. So coming back from the planetary perspective, decarbonizing roads is also very important for asset owners and investors. And why is that? One important factor is strategic risks and associated costs. As more and more companies commit to reducing their emissions and include Scope 3, also growing the cost of offsets require more stakeholders to look at running holistic environmental and financial calculations of their projects. We can also see the governments requiring developers to adopt the principles of circularity, look at the longevity of projects, prioritize or even mandate the use of recycled materials to a certain degree. Ask two people from different companies to calculate same project and they will come with different results. So it's really important to implement a unified methodology to compare apples to apples. And life cycle assessment has been internationally recognized as the most holistic way of measuring construction emissions and is a robust method regulated by international standards. During this webinar, we will discuss how using powerful LCA tools like eToolLCD can help to calculate the effects of circular economy, allow you to choose the best material supplier based on their environmental performance and extended lifespan of their products. We will also look at how to measure carbon and benchmark road projects to understand the journey towards net zero. So let's think what's a true net zero carbon road. We tend to separate embodied and operational carbon and also separate scope 1, 2, and 3. But really it's all one holistic assessment. And when you just look at scope 3, you will quickly realize that it can go very far along the supply chain journey on one hand and the lifespan of the project on the other hand. At eTool, we measure the entire scope. So we measure construction-related impacts. We measure how different low-carbon materials can help you to reduce overall carbon footprint, what implications it would have on maintenance of roads and the use of energy by roads, the use of water. And in the future, we can also look at things like the use of roads by vehicles and how those smart roads can help to, for example, reduce the congestion of the roads or promote the use of electric vehicles. To give you some future perspectives, so the new infrastructure standard requires LCA to include new modules, A0 and B8. So module A0 is a pre-construction phase. It covers planning activities and cost. For example, time we're spending right now talking about net zero roads, right? And could also include impacts from testing, tunnels, or geotechnical drillings needed before you can make a design. And then module B8 is so-called users utilization. This covers things like cars' fuel use from using a road or diesel consumption by trains using a railway line and so on. So at eTool, we are closely looking at what the industry requires and also what international standards call for so that we can make sure that we are prepared and include these requirements into our software roadmap. It is important to mention that some governmental frameworks already started adopting these changes, for example, Lower Thames Crossing in the UK. So how can eTool help your projects to decarbonize them? Well, first of all, our tool is one tool for everything. Like you can measure not only carbon, but you can also measure whole of life impacts such as acidification, eutrophication. You can measure energy, water use, land use, particular matter, cost, and that all holistically. You can extract scope 1, 2, and 3 out of the LCA model. You can also consolidate all data for corporate reporting and reporting across a number of assets, grouping those information for benchmarking processes. eTool is also compliant with different rating schemes such as Green Star, ISC, SQL. So the projects can get points for conducting an LCA and LCC, which is a nice thing. And finally, many governmental organizations in Australia and Europe are calling for circularity in order to decarbonise and reduce emissions of road projects. And a good example is here in Victoria is the program, the Ecologic, created by the Victorian government to optimise the use of recycled and reused locally produced materials across rail and road construction. However, the use of these new innovative materials that can help to solve the waste problem should ideally also help to decarbonise these projects. So it's really important that we measure how these materials are actually performing environmentally, and we should measure this holistically. Now I will pass it on to our expert Rob, who will provide a more detailed demonstration of eTool software, and you will see how it can help your road projects to be both more circular and ecological. On to you, Rob.
Great, thanks very much, Maryia.
I'll just make use of that.
Cool. All right, I'll just share my screen. Let's see. Oh, I might have done that wrong. Let me just check that up. Screen am I showing? I think I want to be showing this one.
Yeah, that's it.
So, perfect, perfect. All right, so as Maryia said, I'll be talking to you a bit more specifically about how LCA can be used to drive down the impact of projects, and showing you some of the features and tools within eTool that will help you to achieve that goal and achieve the targets that you want to set. So I think the first thing to really understand is how to create a robust model and a detailed model to really know about your project and really be able to understand what's going on with the project. So eTool, you build the models in eTool using what we call templates. The templates are essentially components of a project. So they could be anything from a road-based layer or a wear layer to a guardrail or a street light or maybe a bridge component or something like that. These are pre-configured already, and we have a library of over 3,000 publicly available templates within eTool already, and that number is constantly growing. All of our software users can create new templates and add to that library. So that's something that builds over time and will be increasing as the years go on. So I guess the first, well, talking about the benefits of this system, well, the first is that the templates are what I would say, what I would call powerful. And what I mean by that is that they contain a lot of information. So it's very easy to add templates into a model and build up a model using templates, but within each template there's a lot of information. So for example, if you add in a wear layer template, that will contain a material or maybe multiple materials. It'll also contain construction equipment, but within each material there's also a huge amount of information. So each material will have a material life, which will determine whether that material will be replaced at some point during the project's lifespan. It can include maintenance quantities and repair intervals. It can include transport distances and transport modes, end of life treatments, so potentially recycling rates or other end of life treatments, and also end of life transport. So there's a huge amount of information that sits behind all the templates, and that allows you to build up quite a very detailed and complex model relatively easily. The second advantage of the templates is they're reusable. So if you create a template for a model that or a project that you're modeling, then that template can then be reused in subsequent models, which is often the case. You know, if you build a template, you can often be using that component in other projects. The templates are also fully customizable. So if you take a template from the library and add it into your model, that's fully customizable. So if you need to make a change to any aspect of that template to make it fit your particular project, be that you know, a transport mode or a transport distance, adding in a maintenance quantity, or changing the repair interval, even changing end-of-life treatments, you can do that very easily, and that allows you to obviously build a model that is closely aligned and accurately represents your project. So you can have a great deal of confidence that what you're modeling is actually going to be accurate. And the next feature is a nesting functionality. So the nesting functionality essentially means that you can build templates using other templates. The example here that I've got is a single lane two-way road template, and that's built up using a series of other templates. So this road template contains a template for an asphalt paving with an aggregate base. It contains another template for line marking, and indeed another template for a guardrail barrier. And even within that, some of these templates have nested templates within them. So the asphalt paving with aggregate base template contains another template for the aggregate base. It's a bitumen stabilized limestone road base. And the advantage of this is that you can very quickly build up new templates. If you find a template that's very close to what you need but not quite, you can make a copy of that template, remove the nested template that isn't quite correct, add in another nested template, and build it up to what you need. And the other advantage of this is that the nested templates can, if you need to make a change to a nested template or want to modify a nested template, then you can modify that template, and the change will then cascade through to any other templates which you've used that template in. So it can be a very powerful tool, not only for building templates and creating that complexity, but also for maintaining and managing the details within the templates. So just wanted to talk a bit more specifically about some of the particular materials that can be modelled within eTool. Concrete in particular is obviously, there's a lot of complexity with concrete. There's a lot of different options. So I just wanted to talk about how many options and the possibilities with modelling concrete within eTool. There are hundreds of pre-configured concrete mixes that already exist within the template library and within the database. So obviously different concrete grades, different reinforcement levels, and different supplementary cementitious material percentages already there in templates and in the database. But it's also possible to build custom mixes from scratch if there isn't an appropriate mix in the database already. There are all of the base level components exist within the database. So obviously Portland cement, fly ash, different additives, aggregates, water, sand, all exist. So it's very easy to build up a custom mix as and when required if you need to. And the same is true for asphalt. So there are quite a large number of pre-configured asphalt mixes in the database as well, warm mixes and hot mixes. with different levels of primary asphalt and different levels of recycled asphalt, primary bitumen and recycled asphalt. But there's also bitumen itself and indeed rubberized bitumen. So you can in fact build up custom asphalt materials as well to give you that functionality and that flexibility and the accuracy that you need. There's seamless EPD integration into eTool. So we're seeing more and more materials having EPDs published. It's very easy to use EPDs in your LCA models within eTool. Like we have a template library, we also have an EPD library. There are hundreds, probably thousands of EPDs already loaded into the EPD library. So there's a good chance that any EPD that you're looking for is already there. But if it's not, it's also very easy to upload new EPDs into the library using the integrated import tool. You can upload the data in Excel or CSV format straight in, basically to save the data entry, and that EPD will be ready to use straight into your models. Another, I guess, a point of difference and just another aspect of making a detailed model within eTool, unlike some of the other tools out there, eTool does allow very detailed modelling of module A5 and the construction impacts. Within the database, there's quite an extensive list of different equipment types, different fuel types, also electricity, and many different options. So you can put in different equipment runtimes, obviously different capacities, and this gives you the ability not only to model module A5 impacts accurately, it also gives the ability to model different scenarios and options in the construction phase. So you can really test out different construction methodologies and drive down the impacts of that phase. And I guess that moves us towards understanding that LCA is really best used as a design tool, not as a footprint tool. So I guess key to that is really understanding the model, and I've spoken about how you can create a really detailed and robust model. This is about how you analyze that model, and within eTool we have this built-in analysis tool, which really allows you to delve into the model and understand the hotspots and the top impacts. You can look at the model in many different ways, from material impacts, looking at just the top materials, to the top operational impacts. You can also really drill down into where the impacts are occurring. So you can look at when the impacts are occurring by module. You can split it by different construction categories, and you can really understand where the opportunities are to really drive down the impact. And of course, you can create custom tables and pie charts to create that visual representation of what's occurring in the model. And then once you know that, of course, what you want to do is test out different scenarios. And this is something that's built into eTool, and it's sort of the software is really designed around being able to model these different scenarios. So in this example here, this person has identified that concrete is a major impact driver for this particular project. So they've modelled several different options for the concrete component, different options in terms of fly ash contents or blast furnace slag contents, a geopolymer option. And by doing this, they can see obviously the total impacts that are occurring when they choose these different options, but also potential percentage savings from these different options. So you can do this for all of the different hotspots within a model. And indeed, once you've analysed your model, then you will probably want to identify potential strategies for each of those hotspots. And this tool allows you to model different options for each of those and decide which one is going to be the most effective. And it gives you this audit trail to really keep track of which options have been modelled, which ones are performing the best, and then which ones have been selected. So that's really ideal for obviously comparing, but yeah, at the end of the day, optimizing the performance of the project and really driving those impacts down, and indeed seeing whether you're meeting the targets that you've set for your project. So this is really the crux of how you drive down the impacts of your project. It's really understanding the different scenarios. And indeed, this gives you the ability to run sensitivity analysis and ensure that you're making robust design decisions. Just a couple of other features that I'll touch on before I finish up. These just make life a little bit easier, I think. So the first is a bulk swap tool. This allows you to make multiple changes at the same time. So for example, say you might have 30 templates with asphalt within them in your model, and you want to test out the option of including a proportion of recycled asphalt within there. The bulk swap tool just allows you to make the change to all of those essentially virtually with one click, rather than having to go into each template and make the changes individually. There's life cycle costing. So there are a number of different currencies that exist within eTool, and that allows you to do ISO compliant life cycle costing and obviously compare the LCC alongside the life cycle carbon, just to help with the decision making process. There's also automated reporting. So there are a number of pre-configured automated reports that can be generated within the software. They're compliant with the standards, so that really just allows design teams to focus on making improvements rather than writing reports. So you can spend the effort where you want to, rather than doing it on reporting. And collaboration. So eTool is designed to facilitate collaboration within organisations. Templates can be created and shared within organisations, and indeed models can be shared. And within organisations, you can have multiple users all working on the same project and collaborating together to drive the impacts down and make really robust decisions and make those improvements together, which is a really powerful tool. So that's really it for me. I'll now pass over to Nicole, and she can talk a little bit more about how Arcadis use the tool and tell us about that. Thanks, Nicole.
Yep, thank you, Rob. Just making sure everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Yep, cool. So I'll just be talking a bit about how we at Arcadis have used sustainability into our engineering design, but more specifically into our pavement design. I'll go through a little bit about why we decided to do this, how we did it, and also give some real life examples. So the why. We work on a number of different projects of all different sizes, but what we found is that for the design brief and scope of works and technical criteria, or SWTC, we get a lot of documents. And what's common between them, regardless of the size of the project, is that the engineering requirements and the sustainability requirements are in two separate locations. So with that, what we find is the engineering design progresses to quite a significant extent, almost 100%, or right before construction, right before it goes to tender. And then we think about how can we make this more sustainable? So there's quite a bit of disconnect there, and the sustainability feels like it's tacked on. So what did we want to do? We wanted to achieve 3 main goals. The first one is to inform design decisions by embedding sustainability into all aspects of our design. We wanted to develop a methodology that can be applied across all disciplines. So what we started off with was pavements, but we also wanted to apply that for stormwater, structures, maybe roads as well. And we wanted to create a visual style that is unobtrusive, clear, and extensible. So what you're seeing here on the screen now is an example of a standard pavement drawing. We will have the profiles with the tags, and what's different about this, or what we've added, are those 2 grey bars at the bottom of the screen. And they're quite clear, they're easy to understand. You don't have to be a sustainability expert to understand what it means. You can see that the one on the left-hand side has a greater environmental impact compared to the one on the right. So that's what we wanted to show on our drawings, and we didn't want anything to look too different from our existing drawings. And how did we do this? Step 1, develop the design element, which in this case was a pavement profile. Develop the maintenance diaries or the maintenance regime. So these 2 steps aren't anything new to our normal or typical engineering process. We then calculate the volume of material for each pavement type in the construction and the maintenance phases. These materials were then matched to the eTool inventory and the carbon footprint and IS Enviro points extracted from that. These numbers then go through a review process and are normalized in terms of area and design life, just so that they are comparable to each other. Finally, we normalize each of the pavement types by the one with the highest impact. And just going back to the life cycle of an asset, there are a number of different use phases and modules. The ones that we looked at for our calculations are A1 to A3 in the production, A4, which is transportation to construction site, B2, 3, and 4, which are part of the use phases. And there are a number of other ones that you can see grayed out on the page, such as the end of life and the reuse, recover, recycle. But because there are quite a lot of unknowns in this space and there's still a little bit of movement in the industry, we've decided to just leave that out for now. But there are plans to include some of the other modules, such as A5, construction and installation, and B1 into our calculations. Moving on to some real world outcomes. So these 4 profiles on this page are a part of a project that we did about a year or so ago, and they're all for the exact same purpose. So they are 4 options for the main line. And the image that you can see on the left is the reference design, which was what we were provided with at the beginning of the tender. And the one on the right-hand side is our proposed option. So already just using the grey bars, you can see that the one that we proposed has about a 30% reduction in total carbon throughout the life cycle of the asset. And this is what we proposed in our design. So another one as well, which is the shared path, 150 concrete on 150 granular. That's a very standard sort of pavement profile for a shared path. And what we provided was this asphalt option. So what we first understood was the actual use of the shared path, what sort of vehicles were going on it, the sort of life that we're expecting, and material availability. And what we can see here is that there is about a 70% reduction in carbon compared to the reference design. So that was approved, and the clients actually made that as a mandatory pavement profile for all other tenderers on this project. So that's a short idea of what we've been doing at Arcadis, and I'll pass on to Laszlo.
Thanks, Nicole. Just checking, can you see myself or this presentation screen right now?
Can see the presentation, but not in presenting mode.
Perfect. All right. So you should see now. Yep, perfect. All right, so yeah, so thanks, Nicole. So Nicole has been focusing on, I guess, presenting on what's been happening in the, I guess, front end of our process and how it's been developed to our clients and to the decision-making process for them. And I'm going to try to focus for the next 5 minutes on, I guess, the process we've been through and the journey we've been through with eTool in terms of the first steps we've been through and how we've refined progressively and automated our processes to make it a solution that was commercially viable and cost effective to our clients and to ourselves. So I'll just start with the first steps that we've been through. So I guess although we've been using eTool for about 4 years, the infrastructure space and the road space was pretty new to us using the eTool software for it. So we had to sort of reinvent the way we were, not reinvent, but think carefully about the way we were approaching this new process whilst making sure we were aligning with all the different market expectations and the possibilities of eTools. So just the 5 steps that we've been through in the beginnings in terms of the fact that we started with boundary definitions. So our main drivers for this and criteria are to make sure that we are aligning with what the market was demanding and what's the current sustainability rating tools we're expecting as well in Australia. So namely the infrastructure sustainability rating in the case of road projects. So just making sure that we are declaring the right modules in alignment with that so that our tool could be used both for decision making early in the design phase, but also later on when infrastructure sustainability ratings are targeted for projects, and so that we could also apply it to both ends of the project lifecycle. Another step for us was to create some functional units. So the people on the call who are familiar with lifecycle assessment know about it. It was just about creating a common unit of measurements across all projects. So typically for projects involving pavements, we have different characteristics, different site conditions, different sub-bays, various areas that are being repaved. And sometimes there's existing pavement being repaved, sometimes it's brand new pavements. So all of this needed to be comprised into one single unit of measurements, which Nicole showed on the previous slide. So for this, we decided to go with a unit being the per square meter per year of design life. So that's also another characteristic, the design life of pavement being very diverse on different types of projects. So we just needed to make sure that we are comparing apples to apples every time we have a new project, and that we can continuously use these functional units project after project. After that, we had a bit of a trialing period. So as I said, we were not expert yet in the use of eTool for the infrastructure space. So there's been a bit of a handling period of the software and a bit of back and forth with the eTool specialist in terms of making sure we are using the templates and nested templates that Rob talked about in the appropriate way. Which really can be a time saver. So that's something really not to neglect on projects. Once this was sort of mastered, we have been through a material matching process. So at the time we started using eTool for this purpose, that was about 2 years ago. So version 17, I think, of OSLCI was still in place. So although we had most of the very common road pavement materials available in the database, there were still some that had to be formed out of other more raw materials, if I can say it that way. So there's been a bit of a matching exercise that had to happen back and forth with the eTool teams, back and forth with our pavement engineers and subject matter experts to make sure we are allocating the correct impact footprints to the correct materials and layers in our pavement profiles. And finally, the maintenance phase integration. So Nicole mentioned the maintenance regime or maintenance diaries. So it was about making sure that we could integrate the maintenance diaries, which usually presents in the form of what activities are happening on a recurrent period of time, I guess. So that can be crack sealing, that can be heavy patching, that can be milling and sheeting, etc. These things all happen at different times in the design life of a pavement profile, and these things had to be adapted to the way eTool allows you to enter these inputs into the software. In terms of how we've sort of progressively refined and automated the process, we've started with standardizing our drawing notes and adopting the consistent wording on all of the drawing notes, where we do input the metrics that Nicole showed with the bar charts. So just making sure we are always stating the standards that we were using, the LCA modules that we are declaring, what design lives apply to which type of pavement profile, so that basically anyone that reads the drawings know what we're doing without having necessarily to look at an LCA report or anything else. Everything is, all the information that are needed to the decision maker or the client are present already. We also have standardized our maintenance impact calculation, so that maintenance diary aspect that I was mentioning just before. So as you can see on the picture on the right, usually we have maintenance or repair interval that can be entered in eTool, and as well as the maintenance quantity associated with this, which is not necessarily the format in which we get our maintenance diaries. So we created some conversion tools to quickly go from one to the other. We also created some profile templates for all the different typical profile that you can find in the state road authorities typical pavement profiles, which helps us save a significant amount of time every time we are working with a certain state road authority to just go through the process of having all the layers already in our own library. So that's very helpful and helps us to streamline the process a lot. We also created materials library for all the different type of materials that are allowable to be used by the different state road authorities by their specifications. So especially for materials that are less common that I was touching base on earlier. So things like heavily bounce up base or grave layer, which are not necessarily directly available in eTool, for which you have to create the particular mix or the particular product out of other products. So that there's been quite some time invested into doing that upfront, so it can be used throughout our processes. Now we're just looking into these materials libraries. We also made sure to use as much as possible the import function, the Excel import function into eTool. So that's something that is really lessons learned for us. Basically, anything you can do into Excel is always going to be a quicker way than using any sort of tools, because there's always the interface and there's the loading time, etc., which can be skipped while using eTool, so while using Excel, sorry. So anything that can be done, I'm thinking here of pavement thicknesses, for instance, and profile thicknesses. This is something we've been able to eliminate from the eTool part and do upfront, which again helps us save a lot of time. We finally standardized our result export procedure to make sure our CAD drafters can incorporate the figures into the pavement drawings as fast as possible and have no impact on the design program. All this that has allowed us to develop this cost-effective and resource-efficient solution that we are now offering to our clients. This is IS rating aligned, as I mentioned before, and that allows to have fast extrapolation of total project footprint data in terms of the fact that we're using functional unit per square meter. It's then easy to extrapolate everything to whatever type of total area we have for every different pavement profiles we have, which also helps us making quick decisions when there's a design change required and what is the carbon impact associated with that change. And most importantly, it also this whole refinement process allowed us to really make sure that we have no delays in the design program. Most of the time, we only have maybe 1 week between the time the design is locked in for pavement and the time we have to issue externally and internally to our clients. So this is really important to have a process that is in place and allows us to do everything as in the most streamlined way possible. That's it for me. So I'm just going to pass that back to Maryia.
That's awesome. I'll share my screen. And we'll start the Q&A session. Just quickly share. Hi guys, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, you can.
Excellent. And everyone, please switch your cameras on so that we can start the Q&A session. And thanks for your amazing presentations. It was also very interesting for me. we've got a list of questions, and quite a long list, so I tried to answer them as we were presenting as well. But let's start from the top question. So Claire was asking if the templates include a range of pavement types, including various levels of recycled content. And I think Rob has covered that in a few slides. And then Ildar was asking, are there aviation pavement templates available? That's probably for some airport related projects. Rob, what would you say?
Sorry, what was the question?
Is there an aviation pavement template in eTool?
An aviation pavement template. We actually have just been working on an aviation project. So it's the first one that we worked on at eTool, and certainly the pavements are a bit different. They're obviously a lot thicker. So I think there are a couple now, but not a lot. But it is relatively easy to build up these templates using, you know, the nested template functionality. So I guess the answer is a limited number at this point, but it's going to be growing. And of course, you know, the functionality within eTool allows you to build up these templates relatively easily, so long as you know what each layer is and the thickness. You can build it up. All of the components are there, so yeah, it's relatively easy to build up a template using the existing templates.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks, Rob. The next question is from Laura. Do we have to create separate templates for business as usual and after case? So who would like to answer that question? Maybe Rob again.
Yep, sure. Generally you would, although you can, of course, just modify the template within the model. So you could add in a business as usual template into your business as usual model, and then when you model into the proposed, you could simply modify that template into the more accurate proposed case. But I think more commonly you would have both, and you would swap one for the other as you go from your business as usual case into your proposed case. But I guess there's a flexibility within the tool. It allows you to sort of do it however works best for you. But I think in general, I probably would have a separate template for each case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks, Rob. Nikita is asking, are these assumptions based on jurisdiction that can be used where granular detail, example, supplier suburb location, is not known? So it's probably related to the transport related emissions. So we do have the ability to modify the transport distances if, for example, in early stages of design, you're not sure where your suppliers would come from. You just make some assumptions to use the existing template that would use generic data and assumption for that particular material. But then if you know that you're working with a particular supplier and where they come from, and it's also important for those projects that mandate the use of local suppliers, then you can certainly just manually enter the transport distance and assume that this material will have to cover some transport distance from by truck or by train, or comes from overseas and so on. So there's certainly a way to modify that. The next question is what LCI data are being used, and can LCI data be viewed, updated, or edited? So we do have different LCI data sets. For particular Australian market, we have aligned our data set with the IS materials calculator so that we have the same background information running. But for other regions, we have other data sets, like for Europe, for example. So you cannot like upload the new data set. You will need to talk to eTool's IT, and we can help to do that if there is a big demand for that new data set. However, another option would be to just enter an environmental product declaration or an EPD if you would like to change a particular data for a material, right? Hope that that answers that question. Claire's asking, I believe a water use per project module was mentioned in eTool. Is this correct? And also, is there a module that estimates waste generation? So yeah, we have different impacts, right? And one of those is water on energy use and so on. And there's almost 30 different indicators that you can look through like a lens. So you can look at potable and non-potable water in construction and in the operational phase. And when it comes to the waste generation, that's so the generation by the facility in operation, that's usually outside of the LCA boundary defined by the standard. But we can still measure, for example, construction related waste. So Rob was showing in the template, there is a function, construction waste factor. You can assume a percentage that is being basically thrown away, right, into landfill. So you can measure that portion per material and basically report on that part. And many rating schemes require you to also calculate the percentage of waste or materials that is derived from landfill. So there is also quite powerful opportunities to report on those things in eTool. I don't know, Rob, if you have to add anything to that.
Yeah, well, I guess the waste doesn't just occur under one module. So you can get waste occurring under module A4, which is your transport to site. There is a transport waste factor within each of the materials. So you can have a certain amount that gets lost in the transport. You can get a certain amount that's lost during construction under module A5, and of course there's losses through the use phase as well, through repair, maintenance, and of course there's the disposal at end of life. So it's not just under one module, but all of the wastes are accounted for within eTool, and that data is extractable from the models. So yes, it's very much recorded and very much reportable, but it doesn't all occur just under one module. It occurs across the life.
Yeah, Laszlo and Nicole, do you guys have to report on these things sometimes for your projects? Water or waste?
We don't specifically use eTool for it. Most of the time when there's a requirement for that, that's something we assess separately, like through Excel spreadsheets, to be honest. So I can't really talk about that point from the eTool perspective. Yep.
Okay, so we haven't tried. So there's quite a bit of functionality on that to be unlocked and discovered in eTool. So and we might need to include that part into the online training that we provide as well, and because it's not covered, I think, at the moment. So the next question Claire is having is, so eTool can be a tracking tool as well as design tool. So that probably relates to the question of the operation of the facility and when it's already built. So often, yeah, we do separate LCA models for concept stage, then design, and then update design, and then as built stage. And then what you can also do, plug the numbers for the first year of operation of your facility or the second year and so on, and just update the same as built model over and over, and adjust maybe some maintenance quantities and elements. So it's possible to use it as a tracking tool as well as design tool if you need to. So it's quite flexible in this way. Okay, Jose is asking is there also an option to make the pavements presentation to blend in with the areas around them? I'm not sure if I understand this question. Do you guys have any idea?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Is there also an option to make the pavements presentation to blend in with the areas around them?
To blend in?
So probably create a template that would include some other surrounding areas to this pavement by some reason, probably. Well, I guess the answer is yes, because you can create a template the way you like, right, and combine different materials into components, and have your own template combination or composition. So there's nothing stopping you creating that separate pavement that would have some surrounding areas as well. So I'd say yes.
Absolutely. I think that's right. I think there's enough flexibility in the template function that you can absolutely customize a template to take into account integration into the surrounding areas. So yes, and indeed, if you go through we do have free software training on our website as well. If you sign up, or you don't even need to sign up, actually, I think you can just do the training, and it talk you through, take you through how to create the templates and how to modify them, and how all of that functionality works. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free to do the eTool training, because that should help in understanding that more specifically.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. The last question is from Lachlan. Is there an online portal for material libraries that other users have created and uploaded? So I guess this is a very, very good question, and it also ties well into what Arcadis does. So Arcadis has created their own templates and that other users could not use and could not see because of the confidentiality and IP that they create by using our tool. So obviously there are some strict rules about that, unless Arcadis makes, for example, these templates available for the eTool community and for all users, but that's up to them to decide.